That's going to be the teaser, by the way. Welcome in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Gophers on SI. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Tony Liebert and Joe Nelson. Boys, season opener tomorrow against North Carolina. Cannot be more excited for this. Ready to go. Tony, let's just jump in. Let's not even waste any time. Give us three things to watch out for tomorrow in the Gophers season opener against North Carolina.
Yeah, I think right off the bat will be the health of the Gophers football team because the betting lines on the game opened a couple months ago for these week one games. They're set pretty far in advance, and the Gophers got all the way up to about a 2.5 point favorite, and it has completely swung the other direction into North Carolina's favor around that 2 point range, and that can obviously be caused by a lot of different things. Maybe there's a lot of money coming in North Carolina, but there's also now some concern about Darius Taylor's health and maybe even Daniel Jackson's health, who is dealing with a couple injuries at the end of fall camp. So that will be something to watch before the game. PJ Fleck likes to keep the Gophers injuries pretty close to the vest, and so the injury report will come out 2 hours before the game. That's something the Big Ten has done. Last year was the first year they did that. So PJ Fleck doesn't really like to share any information before then. So we probably won't find out until then. But two of the Gophers' best offensive playmakers will play a big difference in the game. So whether they're healthy or not will be definitely a big storyline leading up to kickoff.
So, the quick follow up to that, I know you've written about Marcus Major, the transfer from Oklahoma, being kind of maybe the guy that steps in right away if Darius Taylor isn't 100% or isn't playing at all. We don't know yet. What about wide receiver, though? Who's going to fill the shoes if Daniel Jackson is not 100% or ready to go at all?
That's a great question. I would say that's a much bigger question mark if Daniel Jackson isn't able to go. Because last year, really, their number 2, 3, and 4 receivers are all gone, with Brevin Spanford, who just made the Cowboys' final roster, Chris Outman-Bell, and Corey Crooms. So after Daniel Jackson, it would probably be Lemeke Brockington, who's been with the program for a while, but he's battled with some injuries, and Elijah Spencer, who's now entering his second year with the program. He was a former Charlotte transfer. But that's definitely a much more questionable position group. So if Daniel Jackson isn't able to go, I would imagine that the Gophers are going to lean pretty heavily on the run, whether Darius Taylor is playing or not. So really, both of those players' health, I think, can just play a big impact in how this game plays out. So that's kind of why I think it's the biggest storyline leading up to the game.
Yeah, and you know what? It also might open the door for a couple of the incoming transfers who are fairly heralded, but we haven't heard much about them during summer camp here at all. Christian Driver, Donald Driver's son, and then of course the former four-star recruit who initially enrolled at Georgia, Tyler Williams, who looks like he's built for the pro game the way he looks physically. If he can translate to the Big Ten and help that passing game, he's an exciting guy who I know I, for one, am pumped to see on the football field for the first time. But I don't even know if we're going to see any snaps out of him.
Yeah, when it comes to Gophers receivers specifically that they've gotten from the transfer portal, I guess the past 2 years I've learned my lesson and not getting too hyped up about their projection immediately because 2 years ago it was Dalen Wright, who was from Texas A&M, and he really didn't see the field much at all the first few weeks that he was on campus, and he was a four-star recruit as well. Very similar like recruiting outlook that Tyler Williams had coming out of college or coming out of high school. So, and then Elijah Spencer last year, who was a guy that I was pretty high on and still am pretty high on. He didn't really have much of a role at all until the end of the year. So I think that's kind of a position that maybe PJ Fleck likes to see players develop first and how they fit into the system. But if I had to guess, week one, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Tyler Williams, but you never know.
And that's, the other mystery part here is, it's hard to maybe even draw on from past experiences under Fleck because, everything that we read after Max Brosmer transferred from New Hampshire to be the quarterback here at the University of Minnesota was that he's coming to Minnesota because he's been promised that they're going to throw the ball a lot more. I mean, you don't lead the FCS in passing and then come play for the 121st ranked passing offense, knowing that they're going to do the same damn thing they've done every other year under PJ Fleck, which is just run the ball down your throat outside of 2019 and do nothing through the air. So, I mean, it's so hard to look at anything the Gophers have done in the past and say it's going to happen again. If they just throw the ball 25, 30 times a game, it's going to require more bodies, and that's going to require guys like Driver and Williams to come in and play right away. So that's my expectation. I think the fan base has that same expectation, and if they don't come out throwing the rock early and often, it's going to be a problem. The fan base is going to hate it.
Yeah, when it comes to throwing the football with Brosmer, I think a really interesting question heading into this year is how much they get the running backs involved in the passing game. Because last year at New Hampshire, arguably their best player was a running back, Dylan Laube, who I just saw today made the Raiders 53-man roster, which is pretty impressive from New Hampshire. But he had I want to say 60 or 70 receptions as a running back last year.
Nice.
They got him super involved in the passing game. So the Gophers under PJ Fleck have very, very rarely used running backs in the passing game. So I don't think they're going to jump all the way to the getting Darius Taylor 10 targets a game, but a few 3 to 5 targets to the running backs, and maybe like you mentioned, Marcus Major or some of those other guys in the room get involved in the passing game. I think that could add an interesting dynamic to the offense, especially when Daniel Jackson's banged up. So that's definitely something that I'm curious to see in this week one game.
Yeah, looking at the stats from last season, Darius Taylor had 11 receptions all season long. So that would be a notable adjustment if they started throwing 3 or 4 passes a game to their running backs. Question on the opponents tomorrow, North Carolina. Obviously, the big names of Drake May, Tez Walker, and J.J. Jones are gone now. So who are the offensive stalwarts that North Carolina is bringing to town? I know you wrote about some of these guys over on Gophers on SI this week.
Yeah, definitely on the top is their star running back, Amarian Hampton, who's arguably one of the best running backs, if not overall players in the country. He had over 1,500 rushing yards last season. Oddly enough, against the Gophers, when they played last year in week 3, did a pretty good job slowing him down. I think he had less than 50 rushing yards, which was one of his lowest totals of the year. But he's a very dynamic player. They get him involved in the passing game too. So I think it kind of, when looking at North Carolina, they have a lot of questions at quarterback too. They might use multiple guys. Well, they definitely will. So they're going to lean heavily on the running game and Hampton, I think, early in the season specifically. So I think immediately they're kind of will begin and end with slowing down Hampton when it comes to the Gophers having success in this game.
We all know why that Hampton was held to 46 yards, I believe it was last year, right? Because Drake May went freaking bonkers. He went for 414 yards. That's why Omarion Hampton was held to under 50 yards. The defense was certainly doing well against the run that day, but they could not stop Drake May in that offense. That aerial attack just gouged them.
Yeah, it should be interesting because North Carolina, since Mac Brown came back, has been very pass-centric with Sam Howell, Drake May. They've had a couple really talented receivers, De'Ami Brown, Josh Downs, Tez Walker last year, like you mentioned. And I just don't really think that's going to be the type of team they are this year. I think they're going to look a lot like the Gophers offense has had. And they're going to be pretty run heavy, and they're going to rely heavy on that bell cow running back. So the defensive line will be tested, but I think that kind of plays into the Gophers' favor because that might be their deepest position group on the team.
Yeah, you made a great point in your article about that earlier this week. The one guy I just can't wait to see play week in and week out is Jaw Joyner. He could be a day one or day two draft pick if he has a big season for the Gophers. He's so big. He's long, gets to the quarterback. He's already vouched that he's going to go for 10 sacks for the first time in a very long time for a Gopher. I can't remember who it was, but is it something like Karan Riley was the last Gopher to get double-digit sacks or something like that? It's ridiculous. I was a teenager when that was happening. So things have changed dramatically, and this is one guy who I think can get it done.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting because I would agree that that is their strength. And when my, I guess, friends or anyone ask me how I see the season playing for the Gophers, uh, a positive note is I think they have a low floor based on their offensive and defensive line because I think those are might be their two strongest position groups on the team. And typically at any level of football, if you got guys on those two sides of the ball at that position, you're going to be able to keep up with most teams you play.
So I get the sense that Joe wants to go to our bold prediction segment, and I get the sense that maybe Jaw Joyner is going to be a part of that. So let's jump into this. I know I asked you guys to put together some bold predictions for the Gophers this season. Joe, I'll start with you. What's your first bold prediction for the Gophers this season?
Okay, I'm gonna start with one that has impacts on only about 60 minutes of life. Okay, it's Thursday night's opener is going to have at least a 1 hour weather delay. There's your bold prediction. There is potentially a potent line of thunderstorms that could march west to east across Minnesota tomorrow evening. And if it's anything like we saw on Monday night or Tuesday morning, that sucker's going to be a problem. It probably won't be quite that strong, but woo, we're going to have some lightning. We might have some wind. We'll have torrential rain if that line comes through like it is expected to. And the latest models, I'm a weather nerd. I've been watching it. Looks like 7, 8 o'clock at night is when it rips right on through. So bold prediction number one, prepare for a weather delay during the opener.
Some cross promotion there from Joe inadvertently. Just going into the weather. If you want the latest on the weather, go to our Bring Me the News channel where we've got Sven Sundgaard updating you with the weather daily. That'll be out around noon tomorrow. So
Yes.
we'll have the latest on the weather ahead of that game. Tony, your first bold prediction for the Gophers this season.
Yeah, since Joe had a bold prediction for Thursday night, I'll stay in that vein. I think Marcus Major will have a big game. I have a feeling that Darius Taylor is banged up and we might not see him. That's obviously speculation at this point, but
Is it?
um, but I think Marcus Major is a guy who has looked really good in camp this preseason, and I think the Gophers trust him a lot, and they keep saying good things about him. So I think based on what we said about Daniel Jackson's health, the weather, I think we could see a lot of work on the ground in this game. And I think Major might be a main guy that they lean on, and I think he could have a big game in his first night in a Gophers uniform.
Do we view it as a problem that Darius Taylor's already injured before the season opener when he had the injury problems last year?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Again, it's a tough thing because PJ Fleck really likes to not get anything like to come out about injuries. Like last year with Cody Lindenberg, it was really like no one really knew, even some of the reporters that are as close to the program as possible. So it's, I guess, for Darius Taylor's hope, I guess that hopefully it's not a long term thing, but you never know. His injury last year kind of seemed like it was a short term thing, and then it just kept going. So it'll be interesting to follow. I think it changes this Gophers team a lot if they don't have him. So it definitely would be concerning if it is something that keeps him out of week one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, your second bold prediction?
Okay, this one's going to span the first 4 weeks of the season. And I'm going to say, and I feel like I'm crazy for even saying this, but I really do believe Max Brosmer's the real deal. Potential NFL player in the future. I don't know about a starting level quarterback, but definitely has some NFL chops to him. People were saying that. A lot of the quarterback experts and gurus were saying this guy has the deliverables to play at the next level. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the Gophers end up throwing the ball a lot. Oh, the dog. And he goes for 12 touchdowns at least in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Ooh, I
That's
like it.
3 per game. That means he's battling the elements with the shut up, dog. Go, dog.
By the way, we're going to institute Matthew Collar's rule that he has on his podcast, Joe. Now that the dog has gotten into it, your next statement has to have a dog pun. So good luck.
Okay. Well, back to my current one as I bark my way through this. That's terrible. That's so lame. I should honestly just go stick my head in the toilet. Oh, that's my kid. North Carolina, Rhode Island, Nevada, and Iowa. But they're all at home. I think Brosmer has a great chance to do some damage in those first 4 weeks. And that includes against Iowa, who has a stout defense.
I like it. I absolutely like it. Tony?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of stick on the offensive side of the ball. I would agree with Joe. I think there's a good chance that we see Brosmer kind of play at the highest level for the Gophers quarterback room since Tanner Morgan in 2019. And based on Daniel Jackson's health, I think we're going to see a number 2 option emerge. Whether that's Lemeki Brockington or Elijah Spencer, I think it's going to be one of them. And I think Elijah Spencer is a player that I've enjoyed seeing in practice and training before games and stuff like that. He has all the tools to be a elite option, I think, at the wide receiver position. And I think he gets 10 touchdowns this year. He's a bigger, rangy guy that can play that outside receiver position. And without Brevin Spanford, I think the Gophers are going to kind of look for a red zone target. And I think he can kind of be that. And I think he'll kind of establish himself as that number 2 option and get to 10 touchdowns by the end of the year.
All right, Joe, your third and final one.
The Gophers will have a top 25 passing defense entering the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Why? As Tony's touched on, very good defensive line. I love Jaw Joyner. I like the double-digit sacks prediction he's made for himself. I'm on board with that. But I'm looking at this schedule, and I'm having a hard time finding any really good quarterbacks until November 23rd when you face Drew Allar in Penn State, and then November 29th in the border battle against Tyler Van Dyke and the Wisconsin Badgers, and that's in Madison. I'm looking at North Carolina, and it's Brad Johnson's kid and then somebody else. Rhode Island, nobody even knows who their quarterback is. Nevada, same thing. Iowa, McNamara, not scary. Michigan has a freshman going. USC's got a freshman going. UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Rutgers. There's nothing to really write home about in any of those matchups. And with an aggressive, blitz-happy defense under the new DC, Corey Heatherman, I think the Gophers really have a chance to stand out against the pass, at least for the first 10 weeks of the season.
I like how you just leave out those last 2 weeks.
Yeah, a little nervous about those. A little nervous. That's the real test.
That's
you have a schedule and you're like, oh, man, it's nasty. You've got number 25 Iowa, number 9 Michigan, number 23 USC in consecutive weeks 4, 5, and 6. And it looks daunting, but when you really look at the whole team and the quarterback, which is so big in college football, they're all winnable games. Every single one of them. Maybe not at Michigan, but, I mean, most of these games are very winnable, and the Gophers should have a good enough defense to contend unless some of these quarterbacks just jump off the page and surprise early on.
Yeah. Tony, your final one.
Yeah, I mean, bouncing off what Joe said, that's what makes this season so interesting is as many of those games that are winnable, I think they are losable as well. So there's a lot of different outcomes for how this season could go, but my last bowl prediction is I wrote about this earlier this offseason, but I think Coy Parrish will score a touchdown in some way. The Gophers have utilized him in practice as a returner, and that's something that PJ Fleck has said that they might do early on, as he was a guy who wasn't able to join the program in the spring. He joined in June. So the early transition for a top talent at safety like that might be a little tough as a true freshman. But I think he sees the field by the end of the year at the safety position, and he has the potential to, anytime he touches the ball, take it to the end zone. And whether it's in a punt return, kick return, as a safety, I think at least one time he finds himself in the end zone this season.
I like it. Exciting for the young freshman. Joe, before we go, last week, or earlier I believe it was last week, Tony and Nolan gave their season previews, and I asked them their predictions for the season. So now it's your turn. Tony's already answered these questions. Your predictions for the Gophers record, what you expect them to do, whether they're going to get to a bowl game or not, and how many trophies are they going to take home? They've got 4 trophy games this year.
Okay, let's start with the trophy games. We'll play for the Pig against Iowa on September 21st. That's here. The Gophers will win that game.
Okay.
What else we got here?
We got the Jug following week, 28th at Michigan.
Yeah, we ain't drinking out of that jug for a while yet. No, we're gonna probably get blasted at Michigan.
Penn State.
Man, if Drew Allar's hurt, yeah, we win that game. Otherwise, no.
And then the Axe.
And the Axe in Madison. I think the Gophers have a very good chance to win that game. I'm going to say the Gophers squeak out a close game. Brosmer's going to be ripping on all cylinders by then. Obviously, health is important. But if I'm making a long-term prediction, I will say the Gophers can go into Madison, Camp Randall Stadium, and jump around a little bit. I like it.
So you got 2 trophies, I think.
Yeah, 2 trophies. Two trophies unless
right.
Drew Allar's hurt, and then it's 3.
Yep. All right, so then your season prediction, do they make a bowl game? What are your expectations for them this season?
Oh, man. Okay, I'm on the spot, so let's go game by game. North Carolina, win, 1-0. Okay. Rhode Island, win, 2-0. Nevada, win, 3-0. Iowa, close win, 4-0. Lose at Michigan, 4-1. USC comes to town. Shocker, Gophers beat them, 5-1. They go to UCLA.
We're ranked by this point, right?
What?
They're ranked by this point,
They
right?
should be after a USC win, yeah. And then if they go to UCLA and I think they could beat Deshaun Foster's team, that's 6-1. Maryland here, 7-1. At Illinois, 8-1. At Rutgers, 9-1. Penn State here, 9-2. I'll put the loss on the calendar. And then at Wisconsin, 10-2. 10-2, and you're in the college football playoff, boys. Tell you that right
10-2.
now.
Are they making the Big Ten championship game with that?
Probably not, but the top of the Big Ten is going to have 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff potentially this year. So it's nasty. But the Gophers, if the schedule was ever set up to have some success, it really is this year. There's so many variables in play, and everybody thinks it's stupid, right? Like, oh, Joe's a homer and he's never going to pick against the Gophers, and yeah, there's an element of truth to that. But 10-2 is not out of the question if they can throw the ball. They've always been a competitive team. They just shoot themselves in the foot late in games or they can't pass. So now they went out and solved that problem by getting a requisite quarterback. If they're healthy and they throw the football and they play decent defense, the schedule says they could win double-digit games. Tell me I'm wrong.
Tony, good luck. Tell him he's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but but I mean, like you said, if every single thing goes right, they could do that.
Don't put it that way. Yeah, if it's perfect. Yeah.
I love it. I love the bold predictions, boys. I'm looking forward to this game. 7 p.m. though. There, if the bold predictions hold true, more like an 8 p.m. kickoff probably at Huntington Bank Stadium tomorrow.
Maybe
night.
9 p.m. if that line of storms comes through. Seriously, get ready for a long work day, Tony.
Yeah, I'm buckled
You'll
up.
be late.
It'll be a late one on, I believe, Fox, right? This is on Big Fox. So,
Yes, it is.
National television game, Minnesota hosting the North Carolina Tar Heels in the season opener. Looking forward to it. Thanks again for watching in to another edition of Gophers on SI here on the Brigham Sports YouTube channel. We'll be back tomorrow with another topic to discuss.